Paul Winfield's two classic Star Trek characters in The Wrath of Khan and The Next Generation explained, Star Trek has always been a franchise that rewards attentive viewers. Characters recur in surprising ways, themes echo across decades, and actors sometimes return in entirely different roles that feel spiritually connected even when the canon says otherwise. Few examples embody this tradition better than Paul Winfield, an actor whose presence in Star Trek history is brief in screen time but immense in emotional impact. Winfield portrayed two very different yet thematically linked characters, Captain Clark Terrell in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Dathan, the legendary alien leader in Star Trek, The Next Generation's Darmok. Though separated by 7 years and two very different eras of Star Trek, these performances together form a remarkable legacy. One is rooted in tragedy and loss of agency, the other in hope, communication, and myth-making. Together, they showcase not only Winfield's range as an actor, but Star Trek's enduring belief in humanity, understanding, and sacrifice. Paul Winfield, a performer made for Star Trek. Before diving into his two Star Trek roles, it's important to understand why Paul Winfield fits so naturally into Gene Roddenberry's universe. Winfield was a classically trained actor with gravitas, intelligence, and emotional subtlety. He brought authority without arrogance, compassion without sentimentality, and intensity without melodrama. These qualities made him ideal for Star Trek, a franchise that thrives on moral weight and intellectual conflict rather than spectacle alone. Winfield didn't just play characters who delivered exposition or barked orders. He played men wrestling with forces beyond themselves. Whether that force was an old enemy returned from exile or the near impossibility of understanding an alien culture. Captain Clark Terrell. Tragedy in The Wrath of Khan. Paul Winfield's first Star Trek role came in 1982 as Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, often regarded as the greatest Star Trek film ever made. In it, Winfield plays Captain Clark Terrell, commanding officer of the USS Reliant. Terrell is introduced as a competent, professional Starfleet captain, confident, curious, and eager to carry out his mission. There is no hint that he will become one of the film's most tragic figures. That's part of what makes his arc so devastating. A captain outmatched by circumstance. Terrell's fatal mistake is not arrogance or malice. It is curiosity mixed with duty. When he beams down to Ceti Alpha V, believing it to be Ceti Alpha VI, he is acting in good faith. What he finds instead is Khan Noonien Singh, scarred, vengeful, and waiting for an opportunity to strike back at James T. Kirk. Terrell becomes a pawn in Khan's long-planned revenge. Through the horrific introduction of the Ceti eel, Khan strips Terrell of his free will. What makes this especially disturbing is how aware Terrell remains of his actions. Winfield's performance emphasizes the psychological horror. Terrell knows what he is doing is wrong, but he cannot stop himself. A death of defiance. Terrell's death scene is one of the Wrath of Khan's most unsettling moments. Faced with the choice of killing Kirk or killing himself, Terrell chooses death. It's a final act of defiance and agency, reclaiming control in the only way left to him. Winfield plays the moment without theatrics. There is no heroic speech, no swelling music cue, just a quiet, resolute decision. In a film filled with operatic drama, Terrell's death stands out precisely because of its restraint. Captain Terrell is not remembered for victory or command brilliance. He is remembered for integrity under impossible circumstances, a Starfleet officer who chose principle over survival, from tragedy to transcendence. Enter Dathan. 7 years later, Paul Winfield returned to Star Trek in a radically different role. Dathan, captain of the Temerian ship in the Next Generation episode Darmok. If Captain Terrell represents Star Trek's exploration of loss of control, Dathan represents its highest ideal, the triumph of understanding. Darmok is frequently ranked among the greatest Star Trek episodes of all time, and for good reason. The episode hinges almost entirely on communication, or the lack thereof. The Temerians speak exclusively in metaphor, referencing shared cultural myths that are incomprehensible to outsiders. At the center of this experiment in understanding is Dathan. Dathan, a leader who chooses sacrifice. Unlike Terrell, Dathan is never a victim. He is fully in control of his actions, and his choices are deliberate, strategic, and deeply philosophical. Dathan abducts Captain Jean-Luc Picard to the planet Eladrel IV not as an act of aggression, but as a carefully staged attempt to force understanding between species. Dathan knows the risk. He knows Picard may not survive, and he knows that he himself likely will not. Yet he proceeds anyway, because he believes communication between the Federation and the Temerians is worth the cost. Winfield imbues Dathan with quiet dignity. He plays the character as a mythic figure, someone who already understands he is becoming a story. His performance suggests that Dathan sees himself as part of a narrative larger than his own life. Myth made flesh. What makes Dathan extraordinary is that he understands his own death as a communicative act. By dying alongside Picard while referencing the Temerian legend of Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra, Dathan ensures that Picard will finally grasp the meaning of Temerian speech. In other words, Dathan sacrifices himself to teach. This act transforms him from a military leader into a cultural bridge, a living metaphor who becomes legend the moment he dies. It's one of Star Trek's most profound expressions of its core philosophy, that understanding others is worth personal cost. Two characters. One thematic thread. On the surface, Captain Tyrell and Dathan couldn't be more different. One is human, the other alien. One is a victim, the other an architect. One dies resisting manipulation, the other dies embracing purpose. And yet, these two roles are united by a single idea: agency in the face of overwhelming forces. Tyrell reclaims agency by refusing to murder an innocent man. Dathan exercises agency by choosing death to advance understanding. Both characters die so others may live or learn. Both confront situations where survival is secondary to principle. And in both cases, Paul Winfield plays these moments with remarkable emotional clarity. Why Winfield's Star Trek legacy endures. Paul Winfield only appeared twice in Star Trek, yet his characters are remembered decades later because they embody what the franchise does best. Star Trek isn't just about starships and technology. It's about ethical choices made under pressure. Winfield's performances cut to the heart of that idea. He never overplays heroism. Instead, he allows dignity and resolve to emerge naturally. His characters don't announce their importance. They reveal it through action. In The Wrath of Khan, he shows us the horror of losing one's will and the power of reclaiming it, even briefly. In The Next Generation, he shows us that communication, though fragile and difficult, is the most powerful force in the universe. From Tyrell to Dathan. Star Trek's evolution in one actor. It's fitting that Winfield's two Star Trek roles span such different eras of the franchise.